Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, Bob Przybylo back in the SoonerScoop.com studios here on Campus Quarter. Welcome back to another week of a Hoops Report. And good news! Hey. A lot of winning going on right now. OU women win on Sunday, but let's go back all the way to Saturday. Oklahoma survives in Fayetteville, 65-62. At the end of the day, through it all.
Don't care.
They won the game, and they were able to execute late and get it done. Just kind of your overall thoughts coming out of Fayetteville. A really nice win.
Signs of growth, things that maybe they didn't do against Georgia and Texas, now they're doing. It's something Porter Moser mentioned today. When Jeremiah Fears attacked that ball that was about to go out of bounds, saved it, Glenn Taylor gets the layup.
Reminiscent of what didn't happen against Texas.
What didn't Fears do in the first minute of the second half against Texas when he just let it go out of bounds and was actually off the Sooners and they didn't get the possession. So just, signs of maturity, signs of growth, just being nitty, being gritty. I think we all said it Saturday. It's like one of those games, you don't care if you win by 1, you win by 20.
Take a half-point win.
Just win, and, you go up from being up 33-20. You knew that wasn't going to last.
The 13-point lead built with 7 threes in the first half is like, okay, this is good. And then it quickly evaporated before halftime.
Never made another 3 the rest of the game.
Yeah,
Never made
21.
Another jump shot the rest of the game.
Interesting.
It was all layups and in the paint and free throws. And then you go down 6 and you get the 6-point play on 2 3-point free throws.
I thought that was kind of a turning point, right? Because it was 50-44, and it felt like Arkansas was starting to build a little bit of momentum there in the second half. The crowd was starting to get into the game at Bud Walton. But you got 3 from Luke Northweather, then you got 3 from Jeremiah Fears, and then all of a sudden you were tied up.
And then they just went back and forth.
Yeah,
and I don't think it was ever more than the actual final margin in terms of how close it was during the final 5 minutes. But just a great job. They challenged Glenn Taylor to be a lot more physical, especially on defense. He also made a couple threes. Just as Porter would love to say, guys doing their roles, not trying to do more than that. They did what was necessary, and they got it done.
Glenn Taylor, 8.6 rebounds, 2 assists in 23 minutes. I know that Porter talked about him a little bit on Monday. You just got back from talking to Porter ahead of the trip down to College Station on Tuesday night. And, it seemed like he was extremely happy with everything coming out of the events of Saturday.
Yeah, because when you're able to just do what you're being asked and not go, above and or try to go above and beyond that's out of your ability, right? Like if you can do more, sure. But if you try to become someone that you're not, a player that you're not, trying to do things, trying so hard to make the team win, but you're actually making really dumb mistakes that are hurting them in the long run. But Luke had 6 points. He actually did make a 3 in the first half as well. And guys just came in and did what they were asked, and that's what you got to do on the road. That's obviously what you're gonna have to do at home too. There's a big little 2-game stretch here, actually 4-game stretch, but we won't talk about next week yet.
Sure,
that murderer's row.
That gets a little scary with 2 of the best teams in the country coming in with Auburn. I guess you're going to Auburn. You got Tennessee coming to town. It's going to be tough. This week, Oklahoma going down to College Station. First time that they will be going back through the SEC schedule. Vanderbilt, they jump into the top 25 after a weekend win over Kentucky, coming to the Lloyd Noble Center at 2:30 on Saturday. But let's talk about Jaylen Moore, because I know that last week going into Fayetteville, we had talked about, at the beginning of the season, it was, hey, let the game come to you. And then as of late, it had been, well, maybe he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. I think we saw that on Saturday. He finishes with 13.6 rebounds, has the big steal at the end of the game to kind of close things out, had the big free throw, went 1 for 2 at the line to give him the 1-point lead late in the second half, had the missed layup. All things considered, though, you need continued constant production from Jaylen Moore.
In a very aggressive mindset. Didn't lead to free throws. His first trip to the line was that one in the final minute where he went 1 of 2, because he took it hard time and time again. But yeah, when he's got that mentality, kind of becomes infectious. I think you've just seen a different team since the second half against Texas.
They highlighted it during the broadcast on Saturday night, talking about, Oklahoma falls down by 23 to Texas at home. And, all things considered, since that moment, even though they still lost the Texas game, you contribute a lot of the second half comeback. Something clicked. And I don't know if it was just the mere presence of Dayton Forsythe and the energy that he brought in off the bench, but they have played extremely good basketball over, let's call it the last 5 halves, if you will.
And that's some of its competition.
Sure.
We
played
know
the two worst teams in the
if
SEC.
LSU, Arkansas, or South Carolina, you've got to take care of business there. They've absolutely done just that. So their confidence is at an all-time high in terms of the SEC season. They got one of those road wins that if you've lost two at home, you got to figure out where you're going to get some road wins. They got that one now in Fayetteville. This is going to be a really tough ask. And although we'll see what the Aggies have. I know we're junkies on a Saturday, and that comeback by Texas.
Unbelievable.
It
was reminiscent of what A&M did in Norman. Coming back from 18 down, Texas this time. Trey Johnson hit a couple big shots for the Longhorns, closing.
Mark with the
Trevon, it was an incredible comeback. Kind of capping what I think a lot of it felt like, okay, they're back in the game. Are they going to be able to hit that big shot to give them the lead? And they obviously did. A&M had an interesting week. They go down to Oxford and win a game that they didn't lead until the final buzzer, literally. And then, they go down to Texas, had their struggles. I think they've lost now 12 in a row in Austin against Texas, which is kind of an oddity, I'm sure, for the Texas and Texas A&M basketball fans. But now you return home. And, much like a lot of these teams that are coming in off of the weekend, kind of licking their wounds, they're going to want to protect home court at Reed Arena on Tuesday night.
And you have Wade Taylor IV will be back. Yeah, that was a surprise absence when he was out for that first game. And that's why you're like, oh, you've got to take advantage because the Aggies are a really good team.
Sure.
Borderline great. You wanted that win at home. No one would have remembered that Taylor was out. They just would have remembered you beat the Aggies. So now can you take them down when they're at full strength? Porter emphasized a lot of the good things they did in that game, not the 18 turnovers that led to 30
Well, I was going to say, I want to talk about the bad things that they did.
The 21 assists.
Right.
Great job of sharing the ball. We know about Grayson Goodine and his 9 threes. No one's expecting that to happen again Tuesday.
Sure.
Just like had a nice start against Arkansas, kind of tailed off. That's okay. If he can give you a couple, that's more than enough. But, the way they shared the ball, and Porter brought up again just the physicality that Jeremiah Fears is finally starting to play with, because he was still a little shell-shocked. You go back to that second game, he was being pushed around by Phelps and all the other Aggie guards. That shouldn't be the case Tuesday night.
It will be really interesting to see kind of how he adjusts, because a player of his stature, talking about Jeremiah Fears, you would think that he's going to make some adjustments from what he saw just 2 weeks ago. If first and foremost, though, if you don't want to talk about rebounding, you got to talk about ball security with Oklahoma and this backcourt that turned it over at an extremely alarming rate, had the 6 turnovers, I believe, between Jeremiah Fears and Duke Miles the first time around, wasn't it? Or was it Kobe Elvis? Either way, you had a bunch of turnovers coming from the backcourt. Jeremiah Fears, Duke Elvis, Kobe Elvis, Duke Miles, everybody involved. They're going to have to take care of the ball as well as rebounding on Tuesday night.
Exactly. That was sort of their wake-up call moment, and, they had it again against Texas, too. It's like you've got to stop driving that far into the lane and being stuck.
At least look up. Do anything.
You're stuck. Now you can't shoot. You can't pass. You get it stripped. So we'll see how much they've learned from that point. Great job of rebounding Saturday. We knew Razorbacks had the size, but OU made that work, and that's
Absolutely.
what Porter's talking about in terms of being gritty, about just getting the job done. And a lot of that was Duke Miles. Didn't have it offensively. Really didn't, but he came up with the keyboard and the outlet to Moore in the final seconds.
And I think they talked about that last week, just in terms of, Duke has been struggling offensively from the field here as of late, but you're out there to play defense. That's what you bring to this backcourt.
Yeah, I mean, what Porter Moser called him was the compass. He's the compass of the team, and you needed to get him going in the right direction once again. He did that Saturday. You got a lot of guys playing at a nice level, maybe not elite, but they're not sputtering and falling like we've seen during the last couple of years. The only guy now, Kobe Elvis, has to adapt to coming off the bench.
Sure.
You can tell he's not comfortable, or
I don't think he likes it too much.
Know his role.
But that might piss him off enough to maybe you get a good turn out of that, right?
That's what happened with Waldo Suarez.
Sure.
He didn't like it, and he played better and earned the right to start going down last year's stretch. Now when Kobe comes in, it's almost as if he's like, okay, I got to get mine. I don't know how long I'm going to be out here. So we'll see if he can develop more as a bench player, because they do need the size. I know they would love to go with the 3-guard lineup that's super quick and can create, pass, shoot, but then you get bullied, and you can't go through like the initial period of game where you're just getting bullied and you have to work your way back up. So it's up to Kobe at this point to adjust and figure out where he fits.
Last but not least, and just a little bit of cleanup coming out of the OU Arkansas win on Saturday, they held Arkansas to 0 points in the final 2-13, and I think that kind of got looked over. Obviously, Arkansas had a rough night shooting the ball, namely John L. Davis. Thank you for taking as many shots as you did, 4 for 13, but 5 for 16. 5 for 16 is what John L. Davis was. Excuse me.
Is that any better?
3 for 11 from behind the arc. Terrible night shooting. They were able defensively to get stops when they needed it the most. And if you take anything out of Saturday, that might have been it for me, is when they needed to get stops, whether it be Arkansas shooting the ball poorly or maybe Oklahoma having something to do with it, you were able to get stops. And you're going to need to get stops here moving forward.
And I think that's where the challenge to Glenn Taylor really shined through, because he was someone who was kind of assigned, hey, you're going to be on the ball. You've got to stop this. I mentioned last week, I didn't think they had a lockdown defender.
Sure.
They didn't have that guy that can stop one-on-one, and that's why Zurich Phelps and why Jordan Pope were able to go off, because there's no one to stop him, and he was able, for the most part, really contain that Arkansas offensive attack. And so when you get someone who can embrace that type of mindset, we know Taylor's been around for a long, long time, so he shouldn't have an issue with it. If he can continue to bring that type of intensity, Sooners will be in very good hands.
Very good. Last but not least, Dayton Forsyth got hit in the face on Saturday night, had a little bit of blood. Sounds like everything's good with him going into Tuesday night.
Yeah, Porter was joking about that. He's like, asked him how he was doing. He's like, yeah, I'm fine. He looks like he's been in a fight. He loves it. Like, yeah.
I tweeted it on Saturday night, but that was like the final installment. He gets the full Heart Hustle Hardwood moniker now, bleeding on the floor for Oklahoma. Good news, though. 65-62, Oklahoma picks up its first road victory in SEC play. They moved to 2-4, 15-4 overall. And as we were kind of talking about before we got started here, moving on into an interesting week with A&M and Vanderbilt. Then you got Auburn and Tennessee next week. If you could just get to 16-5, that'd be going 1-1 this week, regardless of where those wins come from, either College Station or on Saturday against Vanderbilt, who's in the top 25 this week. 16-5, you feel pretty good about things, all things considered.
And that's where people say, what's the magic number to try to get to? How many conference wins? Like, from this point on, essentially every single win is going to look really, really good.
It's a quad one
victory. It
victory.
does not matter if you lost at home against Vandy, but you won at College Station,
right?
Or vice versa. No one's really going to care.
Right.
I mean, these wins are all going to carry a great deal of weight. It's just, can you get through it? There's other teams going through it now. Georgia's lost four in a row since beating the Sooners. The Rebs have lost their last 3, and some of them in really heartbreaking fashion. You're going to go through this stretch. It's how quickly can you get out of that funk, make the adjustments, which we believe OU has just by being tougher, or showing more effort, and then getting back on the right track.
I don't know. There's a part of me that goes, well, they did have an 18-point lead. If you're able to maybe close it out, you play well against College Station, and then you have Vanderbilt coming to town. It's going to be quite fun, quite interesting. Bob, we appreciate it. It's going to be a busy week here with 4 games for both the men and the women against top 25 opponents coming up. So we will flip over. We will catch up with George Stoia, talking Jennie Baranczyk and the OU women. They get back to their winning ways with a win on Sunday, and we'll do that right now. We now welcome in the esteemed colleague that is Mr. George Stoia. What a dismantling it was for Jennie Baranczyk and the OU women. 86-55 victors over Georgia on Sunday. And, 4 women in double figures. The one thing I did want to point out, Peyton Verhulst, Reagan Beers lead the way. Saw a lineup change, a starting lineup change. Raina Scott moving into the starting lineup for
she's been playing great.
Point guard Nevaeh Tot.
Yeah, she's been playing extremely well. I think I mentioned her last show as somebody that really wasn't playing a ton in non-conference play, and then even the beginning of conference play, and now all of a sudden her minutes have gone way up. I think Eddie, she offers obviously a bit more size.
Sure.
We all know Tot's a little undersized, and I think Tot's just not as been careful with the basketball.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the one thing when you look at Oklahoma and all the losses they've had this season, you point directly to the fact that they just have some mind-blowing turnovers every once in a while.
And that's not all Nevaeh Tot's fault, but I think changing up the lineup a little bit maybe helped them. Now, Georgia's terrible. Georgia's arguably the worst team in the conference this season. So you expect Oklahoma to take care of business, and they did. But you do wonder, with a big week coming up this week, I mean, 2 ranked matchups at LSU, which is going to be a very difficult game, and then home against Kentucky. Do they stick with that same lineup? Does Raina Scott give them a little bit more? Again, when you face some of these teams, we were watching the South Carolina LSU game in the office the other day, and the athletes on those two teams are just different. And so if you can add a little bit of length and speed and size to your lineup, then you probably need to do it. And I just think that Raina Scott gives you that. And she can handle the ball. She can shoot it very well. She just gives you maybe a little bit more offense. And if she can take care of the ball, maybe you have a little bit better shot against some of these other teams that might have some better athletes.
A little bit of an awkward week for LSU. They obviously played Friday, but that game had been moved because it was supposed to be on Thursday. The snowstorm in Baton Rouge moved it back to Friday. They actually play on Monday night against Tennessee. Or no, that's South Carolina that plays Tennessee. They are not back in action until Thursday, right, with Oklahoma coming to town?
I believe so. And, this is a big game.
I had to talk my way through that real quick.
This is a big game for Oklahoma.
Sure.
Because I think that after what happened against South Carolina, a lot of people said, oh, well, this OU team's just not, a true contender. Like, their ceiling's like maybe Sweet 16. If you can go and beat an LSU on the road, which I don't think they're going to, but if you can and surprise some folks, maybe you can get back into that, talk of being, I don't know about a national title contender, but
sure,
a team that could make some serious noise, come March. So huge test. Obviously, LSU's got a ton of great players back from last year's team. Everybody talked about Angel Reese as the leader of that group. Johnson's really the one that a year ago I thought was their best player, and this year she's, I think maybe the leading candidate for National Player of the Year. I think she's averaging like 20 points a game or something crazy this year. She's been phenomenal. And then obviously Kim Mulkey, she just continues. A lot of people don't like her, but all she does is win, man.
Just a great coach.
I mean, she just wins basketball games.
No doubt about it. Just a great flat-out ball coach.
Yep.
And we love seeing Kim on the sidelines. Oklahoma and Jennie Baranczyk will get their first taste of SEC play down in Baton Rouge coming up on Thursday. And as you said, another top 25 matchup to end the week coming up on Sunday back in Norman against Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky, they're a really good squad. 17-2. They're coming off a big win over Arkansas. I think they've only lost one conference game this season. So they're a really good team. I think ranked 12th in the country, OU up to 13th. So another kind of top 15 matchup. They've got some really good players. Georgia Moore is kind of their leader in terms of what they do offensively. She can really light it up. So Oklahoma's going to have their hands full this weekend. We're going to know. Like, I think we talked about this last week. What is OU? Like, are they just a top 25 team? Which I think we all agree they're a top 25 team. Or are they a team that can make a run in March? And if they're going to, they need to split these games. They need to find a way to somehow either beat LSU on the road or come back and bounce back and beat a very good Kentucky team at home.
It would seem that, as we enter these, I guess late stages of January, you start rolling the calendar over to February, you start thinking about March, and you start thinking about projecting and where this team could end up being in the NCAA tournament. These are the types of weeks and the types of games that you could really have a resume builder for what's to come.
Yeah, this could take you from either being like a 5 or 6 seed to a 3 or 4 seed, right? If you can pull off a win over LSU or a win over Kentucky, or if you somehow beat both, then you're definitely a top 10 team. So I think that's kind of the big thing for this group. And look, I don't think Oklahoma has the best athletes in this conference. That's pretty clear. They do have a ton of experience. I mean, when you look at across the board, and so when you get into this, back half of the schedule now, you start to lean on that, like Alexi Keys, right? Who I feel like, starting to play her best basketball of the season. A Peyton Verhulst who, kind of bounced back after the poor performance against South Carolina, right? Sahara Williams, who is only a sophomore, but, I think is somebody that they're starting to really rely on as a scorer. Raina Scott, who's been in the program now a few years, you see her right there making that basket. Like, what can she bring to the table? And then obviously Reagan Beers, who's just kind of your rock solid center that what you're getting every single night. Skylar Van as well, what you're going to get from her. So, but you're going to need these girls. You're going to need some girls to really step up. If they want to compete at the highest level, they're sitting right now, I think, tied third in the SEC, which there's like I think 3 or 4 teams tied at third, and then a few teams tied in second, and then obviously South Carolina top of the conference. if you want to compete in this league down the stretch here, you're going to need some of these girls that, have had, good seasons. They need to start having great seasons.
No doubt about it. Should be interesting. A logjam there at 4-3. Oklahoma 16-4 on the season. And it's a big week for both the men and the women. Pair of top 25 matchups with Oklahoma men going down to College Station and then coming back and playing Vanderbilt, who enters the top 25, as we talked about with Bob, and OU's women's team with LSU and Kentucky coming up this week.
Yeah, in the LSU game, 6 p.m. tip, I believe on ESPN2. So
cool.
It's kind of a national television game.
Sure.
And then I think the game on Sunday is on SEC Network.
Okay, so everybody's back home. All right, very good. Thank you to George Stoia. I'm Eddie Radosevich. Thank you to Bob Przybylo. That has been your weekly Hoops Report. Obviously, a big one around the LNC. We'll see you all out there, and we'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.